Check. Shit, I forgot my microphone. Check, check, check. Okay, great. Hello everybody, welcome back to the NESGirl. Clearly it is still my first day or something, but you know, we're figuring this out as we go. This is the first video in a series of videos on my experience with the KonMari method. So if you are not familiar with the KonMari method, it is a method that was coined, developed, refined by Marie Kondo and outlined in detail in her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. I did mention this in my last / my first YouTube video. And I had been wanting to KonMari my house. I'm going to use that as a verb going forward. I had been needing to KonMari my house for a really, really long time. I've always found it hard to keep my space clutter-free. I've always felt like I had a lot of stuff. I have a lot of really varied interests, and it seems like I can never have everything in its place all the time. It always seems to be there's a little bit of clutter here, a little bit of clutter there, and I'm the kind of person that if I'm going to get down to work and really focus and be productive, I need a clean space. Growing up, had a really difficult time keeping my room clean, and I remember the day that I realized that the clutter that I was living in my room as a kid was negatively impacting my mental health. So I had spent some time cleaning up my room. What I distinctly remember is after having cleaned my room and left the room for the day, when I came back home for the night, when I opened the door to go into my bedroom, I just felt a wave of relief wash over me. And what that told me is that I wasn't even aware of the dread that I was feeling before I entered the room. I wasn't even aware of the weight and the sinking feeling that I had going into my own space, into my room, and just opening the door and suddenly remembering that I had put all this time and energy into cleaning the room, just how much lighter I felt and how, oh my God, I forgot I cleaned it, yay! Like I didn't realize that it had been impacting me even unconsciously so significantly before that moment. During the pandemic, again, another one of my pandemic obsessions was the Marie Kondo Netflix show. Tidying Up was one of the shows that intrigued me because I loved watching the transformation stories, and I found Marie Kondo's methods really intriguing and inspiring. And I did a lot of my own cleaning around the house during the pandemic, but it was always focused around taking things out of shelves or taking things out of drawers or taking things out of cabinets, cleaning them and then putting them back in, but never actually going through the items individually and determining whether or not they brought me joy, like opening the door to my tidy room years and years ago, or if they weighed me down, which I might not have even considered. I didn't get around to KonMariing my house during the pandemic for a variety of reasons, but I did pick up this book again. It's so strange because I actually don't even know how I came across this book. I don't know if I picked it up in one of those take a book, leave a book scenarios. I don't remember buying it. I don't think I bought it. I don't remember anybody giving it to me. If you're my family member or my friend and you gave me this book, like, please let me know in the comments, because I truly don't know where it came from. But when I was going through my books all those years ago, when I had finished watching Tidying Up on Netflix, I came across this and I went, oh my God, it's a sign. I was so excited. Nevertheless, a lot happened between 2020 and now 2025. I have just now gotten around to reading this, and back in November I finally finished it. I read it top to bottom, cover to cover. The book is about 200 pages, but they're not dense pages. Like, it's a fairly stubby, short little book, and the font size is pretty manageable. So I was able to get through it pretty quickly, and honestly I couldn't put it down because I have been looking for so long to find a solution to my clutter problem, and I feel like this might be it. So if I had to distill the KonMari method into a few words, does this spark joy? And the idea is, if the item in question does not spark joy for you, you discard it. For me, discarding means either throwing it in the garbage or donating it to the most appropriate place. The first thing that Marie recommends that you do before you even begin to think about discarding is to consider the type of life you want to live and the type of space you want to create in your home. It was very interesting for me when I started to consider that, because if you've been to the Nespa over on Twitch, you will know that the Nespa streaming studio is filled with retro treasures and full of video game nostalgia. And because I love that so much, and because that's such a big part of my interest in who I am, I thought that that aesthetic was something that I would want to live in other areas of my home. And before I recorded my first KonMari discarding process video, spoiler alert, NESTube and I have already completed 3 phases of the process, which is quite a lot, but also there's still a ton to go. I figured that since I was setting up my camera to begin recording the clothing discard process here in our bedroom, I figured what better time to bring this retro nostalgia and fun aesthetic that I'd envisioned for the rest of the house to my bedroom. And so I resurfaced the nightstand. I changed out the lamp to one of my fun retro Nintendo lamps that you saw in the last video. I changed out my alarm clock to my super mushroom alarm clock that you also saw in the last video. And I removed a couple of the other things that I had on the nightstand because it didn't fit what I felt was the vibe and the aesthetic that I wanted to bring into my life. The really interesting result of that process was me looking at what I thought would be the perfect reconfiguration and redesign of my space and thinking, this does not belong here at all. Like, I was shocked that I didn't like what I saw at all. And right now on my nightstand, everything's gone back to normal basically. My old lamp is there, my humidifier is there, my old alarm clock is there. It was not the right energy for the cozy, warm, inviting space I'm trying to create in my bedroom. That got me thinking, okay, so if the retro classic video game aesthetic is not what I want for my home, then what vibe do I want for my home? And the answer to that is cozy, simple, clutter-free. That's it. And I realized that my retro video game fun vibes belong in the Nespa studio, and the rest of the home for me should be a place of simplicity and warmth and comfort. The KonMari method is all about sorting by category, not by room, not by area of the house, but by category. The categories that she recommends, she says she has organized them from easiest to part with to most difficult to part with. So the theory here is that you will hone your ability to decipher whether or not an item sparks joy for you easier with items that you are less attached to. Her theory is that your clothing is something that you are far less attached to than, let's say, your old photo albums and love letters. That's why she recommends starting with clothing as the first category. Second category is books. Third category is papers, so think like instruction manuals. You know I love a good manual. Credit card statements, old receipts, things of that nature. Next is the dreaded komono category, or miscellaneous items, which is further broken down into subcategories to address. And finally is the most difficult category of things to potentially discard and part with, and those are your sentimental items, those love letters, memorabilia, old concert tickets, photo albums, things of that sort. Marie's theory is that you should begin by putting all of the items that you own in one space where you're going to be tidying. So for example, the first category to sort through is clothing. To go through your entire house and gather every item of clothing that you have and put it in one space so you can see all of what you have and you can take in and be mindful of how much you actually own. I was shocked to find out that Marie says this process can take about 6 months. That was definitely very intimidating for me, but also I have been stuck in this cycle of tidying and cluttering and tidying and cluttering and tidying and cluttering for so long that at this point I am willing to commit 6 months to this process if it means I never have to do it again. And from what Marie is saying in her book, she's making some strong claims here, but she is saying that KonMariing your home, if you do it right, it's a once in a lifetime event, and you will hone your ability to sense the value in items and whether or not they spark joy in your heart, in your life or not. And you just won't accumulate and acquire things like you used to, because you will have developed this sense of what is truly meaningful for you in your life. And you won't end up acquiring or holding on to things that do not spark that joy and that hold special meaning to your life. I can see now why Marie suggests that 6 months might be a reasonable expectation of time frame for this process, because for us, because of our work schedules, weekends are the most practical time to get through this in a deep focused fashion. And he and I have committed to doing this process every weekend that we are home, that we don't have other commitments. I would say going into the process, my biggest stress was knowing that eventually I was going to have to confront items that I have literally been carrying around with me for years and years. The relief I'm going to feel once I actually get around to discarding them and bidding them farewell, I think the relief is going to be huge. And just like the dread that I didn't know that I was feeling every time I would climb the stairs to go back to my childhood bedroom that was inevitably a cluttered mess, I feel like I probably don't fully appreciate the dread that just sits with me on a daily basis, knowing that I have all of that dead weight and the dead weight of things that I held on to and got attached to for the wrong reasons, that do not spark joy and instead just spark dread and cause clutter and take me further away from the life that I want rather than closer to it. As we explore each category of the KonMari method as NESGirl and I go through the process, I'm becoming aware of attachments that I have and ideas that I have about myself and who I am that I didn't realize I had until I went through this process. So it has been very eye-opening and very fruitful so far. Next week will be our first discarding video in category number 1, which is clothing. And not to give too much away, but that process took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. Thank you guys again so much for being here. I am having so much fun figuring this YouTube thing out and hanging out with you guys on another place on the internets. And I cannot wait to see you again next week for KonMari 1.1 clothing. Thanks again for being here. Good night, everybody. Have a great week.